so much for coming out, even those folks that are over in the corner like D. Jones, my good friend. I see you. And I don't do well with protocol. I do want to get that out of the way and certainly extend thanks to the Chamber as well as to the Indiana Partnership Center and to the PTA for supporting the effort in my being here today. I come on behalf of all of those folks across the country that recognize the need for us to do something fundamentally different on behalf of our children. I've shared all day long and everywhere I go that it is a collective responsibility, and our children did not end up here on accident, but instead we must act on purpose. And we've got to think differently if we expect the expectation to shift for our young people. I've discovered throughout my life that people rise or fall to the expectation that you set for them. And one of my favorite poets in life is a gentleman by the name of Matthew Sharp, and he simply said, "Isn't it strange how princes and kings and clowns who caper in sawdust rings and common folk like you and me are builders for eternity? For each is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, a set of rules, and each of us, as life is flown, must either build a stumbling block or a stepping stone." And I think collectively we recognize that we're responsible for ensuring that we build stepping stones for every single child, not only in the Hoosier State, but across this entire nation. It is our responsibility collectively to ensure that every child gets a quality education. I was with Secretary Duncan last week at the Moms Congress sponsored by Parenting Magazine, and he said, "Well, Byron, what's the solution? What's the success story? Can you tell me what's the short answer?" I said, "I can't tell you how to get there, but I will tell you what I believe success looks like." I said, in short, when any child in this country can go to any school and the parent does not have to worry about whether they can afford to pay property taxes to get their child in a good school, that is what success looks like. So whether you live in the nation's capital, or you live here in Indianapolis, or you live in Terre Haute or Fort Wayne, that you can go to any school and you don't have to sit and wonder or guess whether your child will get a quality of education, that is what success looks like. And so from a PTA perspective, obviously we trumpet parental involvement all day long, but we also take folks to task on other issues as it relates to children's needs. We will not continue to sit idly by as we don't. Folks often say, well, are you in disagreement with the administration? I don't understand your commentary. No, I'm in agreement with anybody that's going to protect the funding to reach our children. Now, anytime that you want to sacrifice the funding and attempt to balance the budget on their backs, then you're going to find that the PTA cannot stand with you shoulder to shoulder whether I voted for you or not. That just simply doesn't work. It's never worked throughout history, and it won't continue to work in this day and age. Our children deserve a better solution, and collectively, we've got to offer that answer. One of the folks that's here on behalf of PTA is D. Jones, and I mentioned her a moment ago because she serves as chair of our National Diversity Committee, and an ardent leader for us. And I want to share this with you because you need to understand that PTA is moving in a very different direction than where we've been in the past. I was with the superintendent for IPS earlier, Dr. White, and we had a great conversation about PTA, PTO, and the fundamental difference. And I tell people at the end of the day, PTA is for every single family across the country, whether you have a child or not. I am not a biological parent, but I'm as invested as any other citizen should be in the academic success for every child. Our security and economic future for this country depends upon it. We don't have an option. We act as if it's a negotiable item how we fund education. It's not a negotiable item, it's a requirement that we have, and we must continue to figure out how do we protect the funding to do so. But we also call upon the business community and corporate foundations to sit and figure out how do we strategize to support and ensure that we can prop up systems that will provide the needs for students, even when the dollars from a budgetary perspective may fall short. I spent about 80% of my time on the road. I was in Columbus last night, I was in New York the day before, and I'll be in a host of other cities over the next 5 or 6 days. Every city I go to, the story is not any different. I wish to say that it was. The state of Nevada just experienced a $6.9 million budget cut across the board to education. I believe you all recently dealt with a $300 million cut across the board when it comes to education. Every state is grappling with that issue. When I sat in Cleveland and talking with their schools chief to find out that they were trying to figure out whether they would close 14 to 20 schools out of 100 out of necessity, and surely you've seen the news about Kansas City and closing 29 out of 61. But that may seem like it's extremely significant, and it is. But it pales in comparison to the responsibility that lies ahead of us. 1 million students every single year drop out of school. 1 million. That means for the time that we've sat at this nice reception, in about an hour, approximately 150 kids would have dropped out of school. Now, I didn't count fully. I believe there are about 30 of us here. So if you imagine your spouse also being here and a best friend, that would be the equivalency of an entire group of folks dropping out while we're sitting here at the reception. We owe a better response and solution to that crisis in this country. And so I'm excited to be here. I've had a fabulous time in Indianapolis. The last time I was here, as I shared with folks, we had Mrs. Bush here for an event called the Helping America's Youth Act over at IUPUI. And so to come back here in this particular role is a very different perspective. And folks say, well, I don't understand. You work with Republicans, you work with Democrats. We're confused. Where do you stand? I stand squarely on behalf of every single child. If you are a Republican, great, and you want to protect the funding, awesome. If you are a Democrat and you want to protect the funding, great. If you have no political affiliation whatsoever, as long as you want to protect the budget and provide resources to children, we stand shoulder to shoulder with you. And one of my great friends that I haven't seen in a few years, Willis Bright from the Lilly Foundation, and seeing him this evening reminded me that we all have a powerful responsibility. And we all must figure out and determine how do we move in a different direction. What we know about the traditional system is that it's failed many a child in this nation. We can dispute many things, but it doesn't matter whether you're high income, low income, whether you're black or brown or purple. We know the reality is that students are not accelerating and excelling the way that they should. But collectively, we will continue to work hand in hand together in partnership to determine how do we create and craft a different outcome on behalf of our neediest citizens in this country, the ones that don't get to cast a single vote. But they vote every single day when they walk out of a school or walk out of class with their feet. They vote every single day. And we've got to determine what we do differently. The final thought I would leave with you is this. If you look at the landscape of society, one would say that the future looks dim. If you were to look where we are economically, even though they say there's a glimmer of hope that the recession is turning around, and you could focus on that. We could focus on all the negative issues, and you could talk about the housing crisis and how many businesses may close, the immigration issues in the state of Arizona. You can pick any of those. Pick any state. But I always remind myself of my time as a school principal when I can remember the faces of the children that I worked with and worked on behalf of. I can think of sitting on the playground in a pile of wood chips with Miles as a kindergarten student telling me that the sky, in fact, was not blue today, but instead the sky was red. And Miles, for that particular day, would go on and on for about an hour attempting to convince me and anybody else that would listen that the sky was red. And I would almost leave that afternoon as I dusted off the wood chips and be like, you know what, maybe Miles is right. Maybe for some reason conventional science and wisdom has it wrong, and maybe I need to believe this 5-year-old. Only to find myself the next morning on the same playground with Miles, and then he decided purple was then his favorite color, and he would begin the same exercise. But Mr. Garrett, have you ever thought? And I recognize that that's what we have to remind ourselves that we must do. That we've got to continue to look with an eye toward the future, not about what is, but what can be, what must be, and what shall be for every child in this country. So thank you all so much for the open arms and the open doors. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, and we look forward to your continued support of all the PTAs and the great work we do. But recognizing that we all do it for the same purpose, for one common goal, and that is to ensure that every child achieves their full potential. So thank you very much, and thanks so much for having me.